Nation podcast, September 20th, right? September 20th. Yep, 2021. And it has been 2 games in, and the Bears are now 1-1, sitting at 500. Andy Dalton starts the game. Andy Dalton does not finish the game is the story of the day and will be the story going forward. Justin Fields comes into the game relieving Andy Dalton after Dalton exits with an injury. Looks like a bone bruise. Didn't tear his ACL, nothing like that. So it seems like Andy's going to be okay. But Justin Fields is your starter. And I know we're all celebrating, but I'm not entirely sure that the Bears don't overthink this and start Dalton in week 3 if he's healthy.
No, I don't think he's going to be healthy. So there's this guy, Pro Football Doc, on Twitter. He used to work as the team physician for the Chargers. Now he looks at the injuries and gives information on it before we get the official news from the team. We haven't gotten official news from the Bears yet. We're recording this Monday, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, 5 o'clock Central time. We were supposed to get something later. They ruled out the ACL tear. The initial tests rule out anything season ending. But what this Pro Football Doc guy says in his article is that, there is a chance of at least a partial tear or a bone bruise, which occurs when the knee shifts. This is all quoted, just short of tearing the ACL. And he says by video from 2 angles, it seems that is a foregone conclusion in his mind that Justin Fields will be named the starter going forward for at least 3 weeks. He says best case scenario in the scenario of a bone bruise is Dalton misses like 3 weeks. So I think you're gonna see Fields in Cleveland and the 2 weeks afterwards because of the state of Dalton's injury. I don't think he's going to be ready. I mean, a bone bruise, I don't know, Jake, I don't know if you've ever had a bone bruise in your, illustrious sports career, a golf cart injury, maybe, Jake. I don't know if you fell off the cart, something like that.
Keep it moving. Let's go.
Hey, that wasn't a shot. I was just genuinely curious. But no, I've had bone bruises before, and adrenaline can put it at bay initially, which is why you saw on the Fox broadcast, the sideline reporter kept saying, Dalton's out here saying he feels fine and ready to play, because when you initially get a bone bruise, adrenaline goes like, I've had it before. You can play through it, but the next day it hurts like hell, and then you're out for 3 weeks. So, Jake, I think we're seeing Justin Fields the next week, and I think we're seeing him the following 2 weeks after that, because I don't think Dalton's going to be physically healthy to play next week, which is a perfect scenario. Jake.
If that is the case, then theoretically, Justin Fields, that should be plenty of time, more than enough time to quote unquote win the job, even though we already know he's the best quarterback on the field / in the room. And the reason I was a little worried was because Justin Fields didn't play the most inspired game ever. He played fine, but he made rookie mistakes. He made mistakes that you knew he was going to make. There was an adjustment period. I'm sure there was, maybe those jitters a little bit, and he didn't play great. He 6 for 13, 60 yards, and added 31 on the ground. It was fine, and he had a pick. He had a bad pick. He had a bad fumble. But those are going to be those rookie growing pains, and it's something we're going to have to live with and grow with. But the thing is, at the end of the day, there's going to be a point where you have those mistakes, and hopefully, obviously, those get eliminated as time goes on. And, over the next 15 weeks, we see him improve and start to kind of cut back on those, those errors and those misreads, and the pros start to far outweigh the cons. But again, we're bearing the lead here is that Justin Fields is going to be your starter for at least the next 3 weeks, likely the rest of the season. And, now I think, how does this change your expectations for this team? Because also, we're going to get to the defense too, and the game they played, which was unbelievable. And unbelievable in a good way. Usually we're saying unbelievable in a bad way here when we use that term, but they played great. And, I had previously said that I don't think you see Justin before week 4 or 5. We're hearing reports that you're not going to see him start before week 4 or 5. And now you sped that process up 3 weeks, and you're 1-1. And we talked about last week that, 0-2 teams, how likely, or rather not likely it is that they make the playoffs. You're 1-1. You're at 500. You have some winnable games coming up, which I think even this Browns game, which we'll talk more about on Wednesday, even that's winnable. And then obviously you have the Lions and the Vikings, who both, are the Lions and the Vikings. And you have tough games. But how does this change, Kevin, for you, your perception of the team and your expectations for them over the next 15 weeks?
I think it's evident after what happened last week how it changes. I mean, correlation without causation. You can't just say that because Justin Fields was in there, it allowed the defense to play more inspired football. But I think there could be some validity to that. When you talk about momentum, when you talk about the team being inspired and energized to play, I mean, the moment Justin Fields got in there, I mean, I'm sure that I wasn't there at the stadium. I couldn't really tell over the TV. I'm sure the stadium got louder. I'm sure they were more excited, and it just felt right, and it felt like everybody was on the same page. It felt like we were all in the whole team was in harmony. And then you see the defense get a turnover, and then another one, and then another one, 3 in a row on 3 straight passes. And it just felt like Justin Fields being in there as the quarterback it jolted the team. I mean, did it not feel that way a little bit? I mean, it's hard to tell through the TV screen since I wasn't there, but I could be stretching here, but I think there is validity to that idea that Justin Fields' energy and just that whole concept kind of led to maybe some of those interceptions, some of those defensive takeaways, and the overall energy of the team.
Yeah, and I think it would have been, like you said, I mean, neither of us were there. We were watching on TV, but the thing is that I think you would have felt it more. Obviously, we've all been saying this for weeks. We want you to see Justin Fields. He's the best quarterback in the room. He deserves to be the starter. He's your best quarterback, and he's the backup. Why? And then we were doing, in week 1, the little trick plays and the little, gadget plays with Justin Fields coming in. And we saw it even yesterday too. But I think it would have been more prevalent, that jolt that you're talking about, that kind of energy, if Andy Dalton had been playing badly, or even like he did in week 1. Andy Dalton was playing pretty well. Like, he had already thrown a touchdown. He'd given you the lead. Obviously, yes, and we know Justin's the more electric guy and he's the guy going forward. But I think that's why you kind of felt that lack of a jolt per se, is because the Bears were already winning and Andy Dalton had been playing pretty well.
That's true. No, Andy, you have to give credit to Andy Dalton the way he played early on. I mean, he looked pretty sharp. Through that great touchdown pass, had a couple of good throws, was scrambling all over the place. Unfortunately, that one scramble led to the injury. But no, he was playing well. But I still just, when you're going back to answer your question, I just think you're going to start to see a team that has a little bit more belief. I think totally. I think that is where we're at now. God, I feel like every time I say where we're at, I think of Matt Nagy, and I want to. This is where we're at. This is this is his signature line. But seriously, like, going forward now, it's like, okay, we can win this game. We have our QB. Everybody's on the same page. We know where we're at. And I just did it again, Jake. I just did it again with where we're at. It's in
your brain.
But it's in my brain. If I say it again, yell at me. But I think, honestly, like, you never want to see a player get injured. I hope Andy Dalton's fine. You never want that to happen. But, like, if you look at the situation, it falls into their lap perfectly, like literally perfectly. You come away with a win in a game where Justin can kind of knock off some rust. Now you have a whole week of practice of him working with the ones. I mean, you saw that miscommunication this week, him being, practicing with the scout team and not really, taking snaps from Sam Mustipher. You saw the miscommunications. They had 2 false start penalties, really just between Mustipher and miscommunication between him and Fields there. Like, you have this perfect scenario now where Justin's going to be the starter next week if Andy Dalton is indeed not healthy, which we think he is. And you don't have to worry about any other talk, any other smoke, any other literally factors. It's just Justin Fields. This is our team. This is what we have going into week 3. Let's go. And I think the whole team is on board with that. There's no confusion. There's, not one person's on the other page. There's no Bill Lazor saying this, that, you know what I mean? Like, last week was a goddamn mess. And I think just that is part of the reason as to why you saw Justin Fields have, I guess you could say, a lackluster performance. We're going to dive into that and why the stats don't really tell the whole story. But those are reasons why. With a full week of practice, with the full belief, I think it elevates this team, a few levels, if I'm being honest. Just having that stability and having this, belief that Justin Fields is here and we can be a legitimate, football team as first place in the NFC North right now and maintain that.
Yeah, and they're definitely, I think you're right, as he practices with these guys, that'll start to smooth out and even out. I mean, Allen Robinson didn't do Justin Fields any favors. He dropped a touchdown pass.
Yep.
That
beautiful
was,
throw.
I mean, and there were a couple. I mean, Darnell Mooney, I think it was, also dropped a deep pass that was catchable in my eyes, and I'm watching it live in real time. But I mean, that'll get better. And once he builds this chemistry with these guys as time goes on, I think we're going to see those improvements. I think we'll see that improvement starting next week. And you're right. And the NFC North, which has shown itself to possibly be open for the taking, and we have the Lions and Packers tonight. So either way, you're tied with someone at the top after tonight. But I mean, Green Bay didn't show you anything in week 1. Minnesota missed a game-winning kick. Yeah, right?
Typical Minnesota. They missed it. 37 yards.
There were so many missed kicks and made kicks. But yeah, Minnesota misses a game-winning kick. So they're 0-2. They're in the cellar right now. And it looks like you're going to be able to take that division crown if you want it and if you play well enough for it. We'll see how the Packers bounce back from their week 1 performance tonight against the Lions. But, I think they're a team with flaws. And so there's a path to the playoffs here. And getting Justin in there in week 2 now, and we think he's going to start for the rest of the year now, regardless of if Andy Dalton is healthy in a couple weeks, because theoretically Justin Fields should lock that job up, the starting job, even if it's, just next week. He should have that. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that this elevates this team, and you can now, like I said, it's happened early enough in the season that you feel good going forward. And it's not like he's coming in week 14 or 15 in the season, you're already going to miss the playoffs. Like he could get you to the playoffs now.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's a perfect situation, is because it's still going to take a few weeks to see, the real Justin Fields. Like it's going to take, like, those mistakes persist, but now he's in there earlier. He already has a half or more actually of game rep. It's like it just they literally have been thrust into the perfect situation. It fell right in their hands, and there's only one way to screw it up. And there's one part of me that is afraid this is going to happen. Justin Fields plays 3 weeks. Andy Dalton becomes healthy, and for some reason they trot back out Andy Dalton. Because I have every reason to believe Matt Nagy would be stupid enough to do that. I mean, they right. He denied the questions in the press conference today, and then 5 minutes later sends a PR man out to the reporters to say, if Andy's healthy, he's the starter. So, it's Matt. It just, dude, don't overthink it. You should be lucky right now, Matt. You have been put into the perfect position. The stars have aligned for you, Coach Nagy. They've aligned for you, and there's only one way you could screw it up, but you're probably going to do the one thing to screw it up because that's what you do. So I'm fearful of that, Jake. I don't know if you are. I don't think it's that, like, if Justin starts to play really well, like, even if he does play really well, I don't know. Like, I just don't know with this coaching staff. I really don't. Yeah. Like, I would not be surprised. Let's just say I would not be surprised if that ended up happening.
No, I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised. So here's why I think that won't happen, and it's a couple reasons. First, before the game even started yesterday, we got the report that, Justin Fields, every week, every day, he does something that makes the players and coaches go, wow, like, he's impressing people with the scout team, and there's gaining momentum for him to become the starter. That was before kickoff yesterday, even, and that was before we're 2 weeks in, and we're getting just Justin Fields every day hearing his name about how much he's impressing everybody. And, this quote from him or that quote from someone else. And he was already gaining momentum. And, we obviously had the Jay Glazer report that the Bears want him to start by, week 4 or 5. That obviously got pushed up. We saw the reps increasing. We got the report, there's going to be more plays for Justin Fields, baked into the game plans as we go forward. Mm-hmm. So they were going to increase the role. And if Andy Dalton is going to miss, this week, and I would say next week, and any more than if Andy Dalton's going to miss any more than 0 starts, which it looks like he's going to miss at least 1, then over. I think that's it. I think, like you said, it's aligned perfectly for this coaching staff. And I'm with you. My disdain for this front office, and the executives and their decisions and how they run things, and the coaching staff and how they've run things in the past. But I do think it's out of their hands. And I do think, though, that what we had been hearing before leading up to this point about, everybody wanting Justin Fields to get more time and get more reps and I think it all goes hand in hand nicely with Justin Fields starting the rest of the year.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. We have Jeffrey Glover in the chat talking about how drop passes made Fields look bad,
Yeah.
all these other things. And that's why you see people who look at the stat line that Jake read out, 6 for 13, 60 yards. It's uninspiring when you look at it, but you have to really look at what happened. Jake already brought up the 2 drop passes, but you also do have to look at a little bit of the play calling. There was some suspect play calling there as well. But one thing I did want to notice is that Justin Fields had 10.2 intended air yard attempts, which is higher than Andy Dalton, who's last in the league at 3.3, and Justin Fields
we
at 10.2 is
saw
third
the
highest.
vertical.
Yes.
We immediately saw the vertical attack.
Like, go to nextgenstats.com, look at Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson's route charts, and you'll see like things really started to open up, but there was still a little bit of play calling issues. I don't know why they weren't utilizing his legs in the red zone. I think they tried a few times, but you would like to see more of that. But yeah, bad penalties as well, as Jeffrey Glover says again. I mean, you look at that Dave Montgomery play that took away 42 yards or something because of a holding call. That officiating crew was terrible, honestly, both ways. They missed a lot of calls on us as well. Terrible crew. But there's a lot of different factors. Like, Justin Fields is not of a bad day, and like we already said, without practicing with the ones all week, all those different factors, like, I have every reason to believe he can bounce back. But that's the other thing too. After he threw the interception in our own territory that allowed the Bengals to kind of climb back in the end, there was a lot of people who I'm sure were worried that he was going to do it again. That it was worried it was going to kind of all fall down and things were going to get really bad. But this is why I said this since the time he was drafted, because of watching him at Ohio State too. The kid never makes two interceptions in a row. He never makes 2 mistakes in a row. He always bounces back. What'd you see happen on 3rd and 9 in the most critical moment of the game? Breaks a tackle from Trey Hendrickson, rolls out, first down, game over. Like, in the moment when they need it most, he came to play. He came and made the play that they needed. And that's why when you talk about how it affects the team, we kind of talked about it from like a mentality standpoint, but now you look at like an actual X's and O's standpoint. I mean, like, how much they can stay on the field. I mean, a 3rd and 9 is possible now, Jake. Like, we already said this last week, 3rd and 9, Pat O'Donnell might as well be trotting on the field already with Andy Dalton as the quarterback. Like, we have no faith in getting that, but it's like now 3rd and 9 is possible. Like, he's going to break out and run for it if nobody's open. So they're going to stay on the field a lot more. I think it opens up, and Matt Nagy said the whole playbook was open. I didn't see that. I hope that really wasn't the case. Not enough like bootlegs, play action for me, honestly. But how do you think it changes them, from an actual X's and O's standpoints and what they can do going forward with Justin, based off of kind of the play calling differences you saw when he came into the game?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, immediately you saw, those downfield passes more. You saw more of a vertical attack. And I agree. I don't think the whole playbook was open to him. It seemed like there were some things that, didn't, get utilized as much. You mentioned, throws on the run or on motion or play action, anything like that. A lot of dropbacks, but that's fine. I mean, like we said, he's going to get the reps with the ones. He's going forward. He's going to be able to, work those things, and they're going to open the playbook up, I think. So that's fine with me. And that their game plan wasn't to have Justin Fields playing for, more than a half consistently. They had their gadget plays that they wanted to do. So they kind of had to adjust the game plan on the fly, and that's fine with me. But you mentioned his running ability, and I know, we were waiting for that big long run, something majestic down where he just scampers down the sideline. We didn't see that necessarily, but there were just a couple times. You mentioned on the 3rd and 9, obviously that basically sealed the game for you. But also, there was a run early when he came in, and he just made guys miss. And he hit a spin move on like his first run.
That was on 3rd down too.
To get a couple extra yards and get his first down. Like, that's perfect. I mean, that really stuck out to me because, that's it too. Like, eventually we're going to get these long athletic runs where he just kind of wows you with his athleticism. But you could see it on the short runs there too, and just getting those extra yards. And I think that's the big part here is Justin Fields getting to utilize his legs as we go forward. Obviously, the downfield passing, which we've been dying to see for over a year, just in general from the Bears offense. I think we're going to see more of that, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what he can do with Cole Kmet because Cole Kmet continues to impress me, and I think that's going to be – and then obviously Allen Robinson, what him and Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields are all going to be able to do together, I think it's going to be really special as we going forward for the next couple weeks.
I agree, and I want to go back to what you said about his running ability and things like that. I need to see more designed runs as well. Like, this can't just be the pocket collapsing. Justin Fields does it on his own. You need to start designing runs for him, read options, all the different things you can do. I mean, I watched the Chiefs and the Ravens last night, and it's every other play Lamar Jackson's on a designed run, and that's why he accumulates 100 yards and 2 touchdowns every game. And Justin Fields is not Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson's one tier above him still, but he's Kyler Murray. He's Kyler Murray. I'll give him that. And you see the things that Kyler Murray's been able to do at the start of this year. They need to start doing that with Justin Fields on more designed runs and give him more space so that he can actually do it without having to just evade pressure. So I think that's huge. But that connection you talked about is important too. And the connection that I liked the most was, between Fields and Mooney. He was targeting Mooney a lot, although he had that one drop. You saw there was a lot of those like trail routes. It was the same play. They ran multiple times. I think they're using with Tony on coming across the field. That might be their dynamite play for those two guys. Like, if they connected on that twice and both opened both times, although they missed that one, I think that could be a play where that's sort of a go-to between them. And then, that relationship between him and Robinson and him and Kmet. The tight ends, though, had only one target between them against Cincinnati, which I thought was strange, especially when you look at their kind of insufficiency in the red zone. Weren't great in the red zone, and they didn't love the play calling. But again, we say this every week, Jake, it doesn't have to be that hard. I mean, Jimmy Graham was lined up one-on-one. If you have 4 downs from inside the 10-yard line, one of them should be going to Jimmy Graham one-on-one on the outside every single time. They tried to go jump ball to Allen Robinson, corner of the end zone with the fade. I like that. But quite frankly, I like my odds with Jimmy Graham on a jump ball better than I like my odds with Allen Robinson. I mean, that just got out of pure size and what we saw last year. So more tight ends, more Jimmy Graham, more Cole Kmet. Like I said, if you wanted to spend the money on Jimmy Graham, you want to give him the $10 million and keep him on the roster, make it worth it, target him in the red zone. If they score, I mean, Jake, that game should have been a blowout. I mean, you know that. I mean, I think we should have won that game by 20 points. It made it a lot closer than it shouldn't have been. The main reason for that is they didn't score with great field position that they were given by the defense.
No, they didn't. There were a couple times where you had to settle or you didn't get, the first down or you didn't keep the ball moving. And that was unfortunate. And I do think, though, because I want to go back to like something we already mentioned, like people are probably going to, be upset with the play calling and be upset and be worried about, that, like you said, it should have been a blowout. You should have scored more touchdowns. You should have won this game more handily. But that's going to go away, guys. Like, it's going to get easier as Justin Fields gets these first team reps.
That's true.
As he works with Allen Robinson, he works with Darnell Mooney, as he works with the offensive line. And the offensive line didn't have the greatest day. And that shows from the rushing stats too, but they were fine.
Okay.
They were fine. And nobody got injured this week, so I'll take it. Like, that's fine. but this stuff will get easier. Like, I promise it will get easier. Like, just the game plan wasn't Andy Dalton gets hurt and Justin Fields starts the rest of the way, for 60% of the game. Like, that wasn't what the game plan was. And obviously these teams spend a week getting ready for these games, and the game plan wasn't Justin Fields for the whole time. Now, this week 3 against Cleveland, the game plan is going to be, okay, Justin Fields, wire to wire, let's make it happen. And I think that will be reflected. It'll show. And I think overall, rising tide raises all ships. It's gonna be fine.
It is going to be fine. Actually, Jason Peters and Jermaine Fetty were the 2 highest rated tackles according to PFF this week. So, kind of take PFF for what it is. Sometimes they can be a little bit strange how they evaluate, but yeah, pretty good. I would have thought that the tackles would have been performing better than the interior guys at this point of the season. You know what I mean? But still, they played well enough to get you a win. You can't really complain about that. But let's talk about the defense now. Let's talk about it, because I was a little bit wrong, Jake. Well, I was right about my prediction of how they would play this week as far as getting pressure and getting after the quarterback and keeping them at bay. But I was a little bit wrong when I was talking about you're not going to see this team win by defense anymore. I kind of made that claim last week. I was like, given the way this defense looks, like you're going to be winning these games off of pure offense. I was wrong about that. I mean, the defense won you that game 1,000%. Obviously, that was evident. 4 turnovers, a touchdown by Roquan Smith. Eddie Jackson is back. And here's the main takeaway from that. And I think something that is the most important when you look at how they played this week versus week 1. I think Sean Desai knows how to make adjustments and get these guys worked in practice. I think that is the main thing that I took away. I mean, like the tackling was good. Eddie Jackson made a number of good tackles. We know he's capable of getting takeaways. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the tackles that he made. He looked good making tackles. And I can bet you Sean Desai was in practice all week saying, look, Eddie, you're not going to do a damn thing all practice except work on tackling dummies and tackling, tackling form. Like that's all you're going to work on. And I just think it's an indictment on Sean Desai about how this defense played week to week, that he is a very capable coach who is going to shore things up if things go south like they did in week 1. So huge credit to him on that.
No, completely agree. I mean, Eddie Jackson was tied for third on the team with 4 tackles, 3 by himself. One that huge tackle for a loss that he had by himself too. Where I at first you didn't even know it was him. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy hell, that's Eddie Jackson. Like, he's walking away. He's walking away with some sweat, like talking his shit, and I was stunned. I was stunned that it was Eddie Jackson walking away from the pile there. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, Sean Desai definitely, and granted, Joe Burrow is not Matthew Stafford. Zach Taylor is for sure not Sean McVay.
Yeah.
But, like you said, Kevin, the improvement was there. And, this might be a hot take, but when your stars play well, it's generally going to be easier to win games. So when Roquan Smith has a pick 6 and Eddie Jackson's tackling guys for loss and Jalen Johnson gets his first career interception and Khalil Mack is getting sacks and Robert Quinn and Akeem Hicks are in the backfield disrupting things. Things are generally going to go well for you when that happens and when those things happen. And it was great. And it was really impressive to see them bounce back. It was really impressive to see just a good, solid, all around good game from not even just your stars. Obviously, when Khalil Mack is getting sacks, it's going to be easier. When Akeem Hicks is in the backfield, it's going to be. But I mean, was this Robert Quinn's best game of his Bears career?
Yes, it was by far.
I mean, it had to be. Like, he had a sack, he had 2 tackles for a loss. He was everywhere. He hit the quarterback a couple times too. Like, I think that was Robert Quinn's best. We're over a year into this Robert Quinn contract that he just had his best game as a Bear, I think.
Yeah, he did, and that's encouraging. Yeah. At least we're starting to see something. The sack that he had was kind of opened up by Khalil Mack, but he still got to the quarterback and made the tackle. He's providing pressure, and that's why we talked about last week. The vulnerability of the Cincinnati offensive line, but it's pressure. It's pressure that leads to these things. Yeah. It was pressure that Alec Ogletree.
And this is without Eddie Goldman too. Like, let's remember Eddie Goldman did not play this game.
And that's amazing to think about. I mean, you had Angelo Blackson get that interception off of pressure from Alec Ogletree, and it was constant. It was constant pressure throughout the game. Like, it wasn't just the 4 sacks. It was just getting after the quarterback, making Joe Burrow, make tough throws, and just having him under duress all day. He was uncomfortable all day, and that's what you need to see. It all starts with the pressure. The secondary played fine, but it starts with what happens up front. And if they look that good, I'm excited to see what they're able to do when Eddie Goldman returns. Nonetheless, though, Jalen Johnson's the second highest rated cornerback in the NFL based off of PFF through 2 games. Guy's an absolute superstar, man. Has a opposing quarterback passer rating of 66.2 when targeting him. That is just a phenomenal number. Leads the NFL in pass breakups, which I'm pretty sure he was top 10 in that category last year as well. This is the defense that we expected to see. Takeaways win football games, and I think you're going to start to see a little bit more of it, next week as well. But there are weak spots too, as we have the chat going crazy about it. You can watch this again on YouTube, Twitch. We're live on Wednesdays as well and Mondays post game. But they're talking about Kendall Vildor and Duke Shelley. There were still multiple plays where those 2 guys were exposed, and I'm a little bit worried that after 2 weeks of game tape, coaches are going to look at that and say, you know what, we're going to throw to whoever is being guarded by Kendall Vildor and Duke Shelley, because those guys weren't really able to hold their own at times, and they're still younger players who need, not really Duke Shelley, but Kendall Vildor at least, who need a little bit more experience maybe. I don't know, but is that area still concerning for you based off what you saw last week? Because I'm still like, as good as they played, that's still an area where I'm like, is that something that's going to come back to haunt us next week or in the future?
Sure. Yeah, you're definitely going to have to keep the pressure that we just talked about, because that's the only way. Like, if you give teams and we saw it against the Rams, if you give a quarterback time to sit back and assess and you're not making him uncomfortable, yeah, he's going to get after those guys and they're going to be exposed. So that pressure is super important. But to your point about Sean Desai and that confidence in him to make adjustments, I think that speaks to that too. Like if we're seeing it, Sean Desai is seeing it. So I want to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt and see how they address it going forward. Now, granted, again, you're going to have to get that pressure, and you have Baker Mayfield who you're going against. And, generally there's some discourse on where Baker Mayfield ranks among tiers of quarterbacks, but I would say generally we can all agree he's an above average quarterback. He's probably Joe Burrow tier, right? I would put them. I would say Baker Mayfield's probably a little better than Joe Burrow. So, that's going to be something you're going to have to address, and we'll see it, against, now you're going back, and you went from Stafford to Burrow, and now you're going back up, another level or two to Baker Mayfield. And, we know the weapons that the Browns have. We know that, Stefanski won Coach of the Year for a reason last year. And so you're going to see, some more creativity. It's not Zach Taylor in town this week. So we'll see how you respond against a little bit tougher competition this week for sure.
Absolutely. Honestly, the Browns we'll talk about this more on Wednesday. They kind of remind me of the 2018, 2019 Bears. Head coach wins Coach of the Year. You kind of have a quarterback where you're not entirely sure how great he is. The defense is good. I don't know. I just see a few comparisons between those two teams, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, nonetheless, credit to the defense. They played well. They won you this football game. And I think as well, look at showed up the run game, though. There was very few explosive plays by the Bengals offense. I can't think of, one. There was some 20, maybe a few 20-plus yard plays, maybe one or two, but nothing crazy like you saw in the Rams game. And that's what we said. They're not going to make those mistakes 2 games in a row. You're not going to see, I guess the Jamar Chase one. It pops into my mind. That was. But
here's the thing with that, though. Like, you minimize the damage in those instances. Like, you're not letting them get. And when they were getting some momentum, every time the Bengals started to get some momentum, an interception happened or a big quarterback hit happened. And so that was the defense playing better. And here's something that I think we need to address too, is that you hope you get Eddie Goldman back. And that's the hope. He practiced one day last week. Hopefully we see him practicing on Wednesday and kind of that arrow pointing up, as Matt Nagy likes to say, but we'll see. But you also get Mario Edwards back this week. Mario Edwards' suspension is up too, and he played really, really well last year, especially at the end of the year before he got suspended. And that's a really big piece too, that pressure. He was a specialist, it felt like, at getting that's his main calling card, and he played really well. So that's a big piece that you get back, another guy in the rotation that can bring that pressure and disruption, and that'll help as well. So you're getting at least one of those guys, hopefully both of them back this week. And that'll be big considering, like we said, you're facing a little bit of a tougher offense this week. So yeah, definitely.
If you get both back, watch out. Watch out. And also, we got Jeffrey in the chat saying Roquan is a stud. Can we get some props for him? Yes, we have to give Roquan his props because he's on Defensive Player of the Year watch. He simply is. A touchdown, a sack, 8 tackles, interception. That is Defensive Player of the Year type things. He's the most valuable player on the defense right now. Absolutely phenomenal play on that pick 6. He just read Joe Burrow like a book. It was a great, it was not an easy interception. He kind of had to reach out for it, reeled it in, took it to the house. That was absolutely electrifying. Freaking loved that. It was great to have
he's picking
a touchdown
up exactly
back
where he left off last year. Last year we were saying, he almost led the league in tackles last year. We were literally saying that, this guy should have been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate last year, should have got more buzz. The Bears and generally their status as like a fringe, kind of a crappy team didn't help him. But now, if Justin Fields takes you to where you think you're going, and like I said, Roquan Smith has picked up exactly where he left off last year. He's all over the second week in a row. He's led the team in tackles. Now the touchdown you throw into, he had a sack as well. So yeah, Roquan Smith, a Defensive Player of the Year watch right now. It has to be. Has to be.
Superstar. And then we have Chicago for real saying, can we call it Justin Fields for the play of the game? Yes, because and what they're referring to as play of the game is not the throw to Mooney, not the scramble 3rd and 9. It's recovering his own fumble in territory that could maybe be the reason you're 1-1 right now. That is just like, sometimes you get a little bit uneasy to see a rookie quarterback like diving for a ball. I guess sometimes injuries can happen that way, but to go after that and
he didn't give up.
He did not give up. I mean, it could have been so easy for him to just lay on the ground and watch, the Bengals roll into the end zone for a touchdown there. Swat away, went after, recovered it, potentially saves you the game. That speaks to who he is as a player, who he is as a quarterback. Freaking loved it. But I still think, I don't know, I still think that 3rd and 9 scramble is the play of the game. Because if you give the ball back to the Bengals there with 2 minutes, 30 seconds left, I mean, they probably at least tie it most likely and maybe score a touchdown to win the game. I think that 3rd and 9 scramble is the play of the game, but no, that recovery of his own fumble, phenomenal grit, just from a rookie quarterback.
That was his best
from a
play
rookie
of the day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That or the 3rd and 9. I don't know which one I'm taking. It's
Toss up,
even, but
the thing with even the 3rd and 9, even you would expect your defense, the way they are playing, to have been able to stand for you and get you the ball back. But that fumble recovery, Cincinnati scores for sure. Right? They get at least 3 in that situation if you lose that fumble, regardless. So that 3rd and 9, you end up punting it. Your defense was playing well enough though that they probably keep Cincinnati off the board in that instance. That fumble, they're scoring in some capacity. And you're right, you might be 0-2. There's a very legit possibility. So yeah, I mean, that was a very heads up play by Justin Fields. Obviously the meme is the Cam Newton business decisions quote, and Justin Fields wasn't making a business decision. He was making a team decision, and it probably saved you that game and allowed you to ice the game. So yeah, I mean, that was great. And I mean, it's just, it's a stark contrast from last week. It feels like there's just so much. The Justin Fields thing aside, because like I said, Andy Dalton was playing well. He looked good.
Yes.
But just the defense is especially just so. That's what I'm excited that we're talking about here, because regardless, I mean, like I said in the beginning, Justin didn't have the best day. He didn't light the world on fire. But regardless, we're excited about Justin Fields for all the reasons we said. Getting the reps with the ones, getting the chemistry going, the playbook opening up, et cetera, et cetera. But the defense, I know we agreed that a defense isn't going to win you a Super Bowl anymore, especially in the modern NFL. It's helpful. Yes, you definitely need a good defense. But to come back here this week and say, oh, your defense won you that game, it's refreshing, because we had seen this defense signs of regression, even going back to last year. And this without, one of your best players in Eddie Goldman, without a key player, Mario Edwards, along the defensive line, and, with questionable play from Eddie Jackson, which he played well yesterday. But that's what makes me hopeful that this can be a playoff team as well. Because, Cincinnati's still not a playoff team probably, but they were a legitimate, capable team. Yeah, it's not the Texans from last year. It's not the Vikings who you always kick the crap out of anyway. They're probably a 7-win team. They're aggressively mediocre, but they're mediocre and not bad. You'll take that. So yeah, I mean, it's good. It's a lot of things to be positive about and to take into, week 3 against the Browns.
Yeah, like you say, stark contrast. I mean, last week the world was on fire, the sky was falling down, and then and that's why we said, we went on the show pregame and say, week 1 overreaction. I'm not too worried about it. Not too worried about Sunday Bears Bengals, and look what happens. So it happens every year. Week 1 happens. If things go great, you're winning the Super Bowl. If things don't go great, it's fire everybody. It's trade everybody. It's the world is falling apart. So it's what happens after week 1. But now you have week 2. Now you can really evaluate things. You don't have to get too far ahead of yourself, and it is encouraging. But the other thing too, I don't know if any of the people in the chat were at the game or attended it. I think the Bears could be a top 5, top 3 defense at home. And then the story is a little bit different on the road. I mean, because this has been the case since 2018. I mean, they are menacing. It is hard to play against that defense at Soldier Field. And now, I think part of it just has to be you're on your home turf. But I think the crowd makes a huge difference as well. And especially, I'm sure how loud they got once Justin was in the game and how electrifying that was for everybody there. Because I had friends who were at the game who aren't really Bears fans, but really went just to see Justin Fields play because they went to Ohio State. So those people are also getting loud, and then the whole atmosphere is just energetic. So, at home, this is, I think you're going to start to maybe evaluate the team a little bit differently, home versus away. You never really want to see that, though. You do want to see your team be just as capable on the road as they are at home, because you never know what happens in the playoffs as far as the seeding that you get, and it's likely that they would play a road game in the playoffs. But it's still encouraging that they can perform in front of the home crowd, because that's one of the most gut-wrenching things is when you're worse at home and you can't even do the little things at home and you don't play well at home. It's like, okay, well, now what the hell are you going to do on the road if you can't do these things on your home turf? So that was encouraging as well.
And that's a little scary to think about, considering that you have to go, and this week you're going to Cleveland. Obviously, we talked about what, their offensive potential and how they have a good
Right.
offense. You also, obviously you have to go to Lambeau at one point, but you also have to go to Tampa Bay. You have to go to Pittsburgh, and you have to go to Seattle. I mean, so those are a little scary. Now, granted, you kind of catch a break. The 49ers are playing at Soldier. The Ravens are at Soldier Field. The Cardinals are at Soldier Field. So it's kind of, you win some, you lose some in that scenario. But I mean, you're right. You have to play well at home. If you can be a, top 3, top 5 defense at home and just be top 12 on the road, top 10.
Yeah.
And
sure.
just bring us something. You don't have to be dominant like you were yesterday, but be, keep your team in the game. You can't be like you were against the Rams. Somewhere in the middle. It's like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I would agree, and it's also worth noting that they don't play back-to-back home games this year. It's home road at flip flops, which is actually pretty rare. So that's pretty interesting to see. So you won't be able to see them game momentum at home for 2 games, but sometimes it's better that way, because if you have 2 at home, you got to face 2 on the road at some point. So I'm completely fine with the way the schedule shakes out. Jeffrey says the Bears were 3-5 at home last year, so yeah, good start to the season in front of the home crowd. That you got on the fort.
Do you think last year's team loses yesterday's game?
Yes, I 1,000% think they lose yesterday's game. Yeah. I mean, I think regardless of the quarterback situation, I think they lose that game. I really, really do. And again, I think that speaks, I can't go into why from an X's and O's standpoint. I mean, sure, I guess Justin Fields is better, but based off the way he played, all those things, I'm not going to dive down that hole. But that's why I say this is more about the mentality and the energy than it is about that right now. I mean, that team was just fired up in that moment because of the quarterback, because of the situation. They were ready to play. They were excited. And I think that was the difference between a win and a loss. I truly, truly do think that was the difference. So, again, I'm not saying Justin Fields caused that. I don't know what it is, but traditionally we see this team come out flat out of the half. We see this team come out flat in the start of the game. That didn't happen both of these times. They scored on the opening drive, and out of the half, I think all 3 interceptions were in the second half, I believe, in the 3 straight plays. Those were all in the second half, I believe, the third quarter, maybe some in the fourth. So that's again, I think that's kind of the thing that you have to look at, and why, going back to the first question Jake asked me in the beginning of the show, what differences do you see in this team going forward? That is the fundamental defense. I would like to say, quoting a viral tweet, we got our swagger back. I think that's what we have. I mean, this is what Matt Nagy brands himself as, the man with swagger. Sometimes too much swagger can get you a penalty nowadays, 15 yards to Sean Gibson, my boy. We can't be taunting players, even though I think the rule is freaking stupid and I hate it. Freaking hate it, because why can't players show emotion on the field? What the hell is wrong with that? But hey, if the Bears got their swagger back, you saw what happened in 2018 when they had a little bit of swagger. You know what I mean? These things, they're real. They're real, and a little bit of swagger can lead to some W's.
No, I mean, we know when this Bears defense is having fun, things are infinitely easier for the team, for them, for everybody, for us watching. Like when they're having fun, and I think that's generally around sports. When your team is having fun, obviously that means things are going pretty well. So maybe that's an obvious thing to say, but I mean, there were times last year when you didn't see them having fun, and it was evident, and people were on the sidelines,
very evident,
visibly pissed off. And so, obviously we're 2 games in, but you were at that danger point after the Rams game, and you were kind of, our reaction pod last week, we were saying, well, this is a little, it's a little concerning. Like there's some things that, we don't love. And now
you called it the low point
after this. Right. And so, we're here, you get a win, obviously overreaction Monday. Everything's great and grand and good. But it's also kind of back to our original point. Like, it's easy to feel good about this team now, knowing that it's in the hands of Justin Fields going forward, and you're going to see improvement. Again, no, he didn't have the greatest game, but that just means it's only up from here, because I wouldn't be surprised if that's legitimately the worst game of the year we see from Justin Fields. Like, I don't think that's outrageous to say. And I mean, obviously, a fumble and an interception and no touchdowns. Like, yeah, okay, maybe again, that's an obvious thing to say, but you're only going up from here. And we're going to see that immediately, I think, once he starts building this chemistry with these guys. And it's going to be really exciting. And I think the playbook is definitely going to get more diverse starting this week on Sunday. But we'll get into all that on Wednesday, and we'll kind of break down the the matchups and what we're going to see. But I mean, Roquan Smith, player of the game. I think don't overthink it.
Let's do defense, offense, player of the game. I'll go Roquan Smith, defensive player of the game, and offensive player of the game. I don't know. It's kind of hard to declare. I guess Allen Robinson for catching the touchdown. I mean, Dave Montgomery played fine. I don't know. Maybe Jason Peters. I don't know.
I don't think it's crazy to say Justin Fields. I mean, we talked about the third down run at the end of the game. We talked about the fumble. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say Justin Fields.
It's not. And also, some people might say it's not crazy to say Andy Dalton. I mean, he put points on the board for you. I don't know.
Agreed.
But I do want to, we have always on this show been like, let's be nice to Andy. It's not his fault he's in this situation. And it's quite, frankly, it was kind of disappointing because, when he got hurt, everybody was like everyone's like, oh, good. Now we can see Justin. You know what I mean?
Honestly, I was surprised. I generally saw, I didn't see very much like, oh yes, Andy Dalton's hurt. Like I generally saw, and I think people know like it's kind of crappy and shitty to cheer injuries. It's maybe privately people are like, but I mean, right. I mean, kind of like you said, it was unfortunately kind of a best case scenario.
Well, yeah. Well, what I'm saying too is first of all, Nagy put him in that situation. That's not on him. And that's why I feel bad at times. But also, you got to give the guy credit for standing there, rooting Justin Fields on the whole time. I mean, like we said, the sideline reporter might have said he was fine. Maybe he could have come back into the game or not. I'm not sure. But he was there, patting him on the head, smiling, cheering him on. This dude. Although we talk so much about him, he's not Alex Smith in the Mahomes scenario. He's not a guy who's been with the team for so long. I think he's doing his absolute best. And we talked about this in the offseason as well, to be the best possible mentor he can be for Justin Fields. And what I've always said in my career playing sports and just life is play your role to the best of your ability. If you're a player in a sport who your role is to be the third person on the bench, be the best freaking bench player to ever exist. You know what I mean? And if it becomes the next 3 weeks that his role is to be Justin Fields' mentor and have the earpiece on and have the clipboard on and help him out through the course of a game and through the course of practice, I have every reason to believe Andy Dalton's going to be the best freaking mentor possible. I mean, he is a good teammate, a good player, nothing but respect and love for that aspect of his game. I mean, it was impressive because I know there's some guys who would pout in that situation. Like Cam Newton might pout in that situation, if you, not to name names. I mean, it's not Cam Newton, just kind of throw a name out there, but it was just good to see that support. You know what I mean?
Right. No. It was definitely, I mean, and, Jeffrey in the chat just said, Andy Dalton's a stand-up guy. I think that's generally Andy Dalton is a nice guy, or seen as a nice guy throughout the league. Does a lot of charity work, I believe, too. Stand-up guy. And, you could relay it to the Patriots, Cam Newton, or if you look at Aaron Rodgers, look at that situation.
Oh god.
We're seeing it in San Francisco too. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is whatever, I'll just go out there and play. So I think you got the right guy for the situation. Obviously, we didn't know we'd end up with Justin Fields when Andy Dalton was signed, but it kind of worked out in a way. You could have tried to get Cam Newton or Teddy Bridgewater, and who knows if that would have worked out then. But you got Andy Dalton, who I think is aware of both where he's at in his career, as well as he already had kind of these pre-existing reputation as generally a good guy.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So props to Andy Dalton for that. The hair looked good too. I gotta say, his hair was looking good on TV, man. I mean, good for him. I don't know what he's got, what shampoo he's been using or conditioner or whatever, but whatever it is, we're gonna need to ask him about that if we ever get him on this show. I'm gonna have to ask that question. Maybe Head and Shoulders, maybe see you on a TV ad soon. I don't know. This is what happens at the end of our show. But nonetheless, regardless of what happens tonight, we're recording this Monday at 6:50. Lions-Packers play. By the time you're listening to this, the game will have been over, so we're gonna look like stupid about talking about it. But Bears are first place. Regardless of who ends that game,
as of this
you're
moment,
Chicago Bears. Well, no, as of whenever whoever listens to this listens to this.
Well, I was going to say, as of this moment, you're alone in first place.
You're alone. That will not persist because
Right.
Somebody has to get a win on Monday. Or maybe not. Maybe we're looking at a tie.
Maybe
We're looking at a tie. Let's go.
That's true.
Hey, you never
That's
know.
true.
I mean,
true.
look. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to preview that game, but I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, some of the season sus. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions win, or at least cover the spread. I don't know, but first place,
the Fighting Dan Campbells. But anyway, so we'll be back Wednesday at 7 Central, 8 Eastern, right here to start breaking down the Week 3 matchup against the Browns with your likely starting quarterback Justin Fields, and we'll break it all down. We'll be here to break down the matchups, what we expect to see, and of course, as always, our predictions. So thank you guys for coming through to watch, to comment. The comment section was unreal today.
Yeah, popping off.
We hope to see you again on Wednesday, and we'll talk with you guys again then. So until then, for myself and for Kevin, thank you guys. We'll see you Wednesday, and as always, bear down.
Bear down.